making an admission. Well, that's not the point of it. The point is that you will be aware. You will be intellectually aware. We're not asking you to make some stupid admission. We're saying that you're going to be aware of the fact, quite aware, that there's no way to convert this through any mental gymnastics into something good or something benign. It has a negative character that is just written all over it. Okay, your body's reaction, it's every sensation running through you is going to make you acutely aware that this is not a good thing that's happening, and that you would not, under any circumstances, blueprint a universe that consisted of nothing but that sensation. That's the simple truth of it.
Boiling me alive. You could probably get me to say no, this is objectively bad. If that was like means you would kill me more quickly or stop. But it doesn't make it not so. It's like, yeah. Right.
Again, it's not about extorting you into saying something. It's about informing you to say something. And so he also has a theory that, it's like we all know what pain is, and that's really not true. And I know it from my personal experience. Like I said, up to the age of 30, I had an idea that pain was this big. That's how big pain could get. And then I realized that now pain can get that big. And maybe that still isn't appreciated. There's something out there that I'm not aware of, that it can get really even more preposterously hideous. So I could be underestimating it even more based on somebody else's life experience and based on what I haven't experienced. But the fact that we can be incredibly ignorant of how bad things can be is quite possible.
Well, people get really upset, and like I've been in all kinds of horrible situations where it felt like there was nothing in the world but suffering at that time. I mean, that's how suffering is experienced. But to like say that experience.
Yeah, well, whatever. I mean, what? So you had some intellectual perception that it's all bad, or blah, blah, blah. I mean, what? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. You can say you had some bad experiences where it was hard for you to see past your own pain to, an objective truth that your pain wasn't substantial enough to do something or whatever. So, I mean, you can make some equation out of that, but I mean, to argue that somehow, well, it was that and it wasn't that. I mean, that's just like saying, well, one day I believe, in unicorns, and the next day I believe in fat gods. I mean, what's the point of even arguing or talking to anybody if you're going to change your philosophical perceptions any moment? I mean, if any moment now you're just going to completely do a reversal, what the hell are you talking for?
Experience then proves that suffering is objective. It's like really, hello, you're not seeing why that's subjective. Anyway.
So this is why you think you're some sort of clean arguer, and you have no one has a reason to find you a snarky asshole. But, that kind of rhetoric, oh, hello. Well, hello, moron. Yes, it's quite possible that somebody can say, quite simply, that they can be informed and understand a circumstance and know that there's a truth. And like I said, you're going to argue that it's not possible that I could create a maze of animal carnage where the animals lived a terrible, horrible existence. I designed a maze that was just horrible. It killed them slowly and methodically in the most horrible way possible. It forced them to reproduce, and it just went on and on like that. And if I created that machine, and I proposed that we build zillions of them and just litter the entire universe with that machine, you're going to make some kind of preposterous argument that if we annihilate all human beings, that somehow those machines left behind aren't doing something negative. That now, because there's no subjective human to make a judgment, to feel an emotion, that somehow what's happening inside those devices doesn't matter anymore. And that's just bullshit. Yes, they are subjects, but they are subjects not interpreting their existence. We, from an objective perspective, can analyze their existence and make judgments about its qualitative reality. And that judgment would be, no, that's not a good state to have matter in. Just make it into little fluffy, stuffed animals or something. But don't bother making it into that.
Okay, so there's that. Anyway, the point I was going to make in response to your points, Peter, and I'm sorry I got sidetracked there, is this thing about suffering and pleasure, right? I don't think that I don't know how Gary's distinguishing them, and I'm only hearing, again, you kind of interpreting how Gary's distinguishing them.
Well, that's another brilliant part of his this idea that he involves himself in a conversation where he doesn't have any real interest in getting the whole context of the conversation. So I suppose he expects somebody to get him up to speed on what other people have said rather than watching their videos. Fail all over the place for that one, fella.
Your restatement of his interpretation, at least, or your interpretation of his interpretation, doesn't really make sense to me for the reason that pleasure and pain are, yes, they're physically understood in the sense that there's chemical changes happening in the body and
yeah, and also understood as being quite opposite. There's the difference between desire and fear is quite obvious. The difference between pain and pleasure is quite obvious. They're not the same thing. They're not opposites. I would argue they're made out of each other, but that's a whole different argument.
Interactions between the nerves which produce these feelings of pleasure and pain, but they're both totally objective. I mean,
he meant to say subjective, one would imagine. But of course they're not. They are qualitatively describable as different things, and that description can be completely independent of some kind of idea of cuteness or tastiness or some other subjective emotional response. You can intellectually observe it, qualify it, define it. It is not an outrageous reach for us to say quite emphatically that it is reliable truth, that harm, obvious harm, pain, suffering, however inflicted, is a lesser state of being for a conscious creature. That's hardly an outrageous, bold statement. It's as bold as saying the world is round.
We feel so comfortable looking at a dying something and saying it's suffering. But we don't know that. I mean, we don't even necessarily know that another human being feels hunger the same way. We can assume that it's more...
Yeah, but why even play this game? So you're going to say that 99.9999% of malaria victims aren't suffering. Of course they are. I mean, so there's one or two exceptions on planet Earth where they had malaria and they laughed their way through it and they thought it was a kick-ass time. It's just a stupid argument. You want to just keep minimizing the reality and keep pretending that suffering is like angstiness. Oh, gee, there's a hair there on my arm. I don't like that it's there. That somehow that's suffering. That's not what we're talking about, you stupid, ignorant, trivializing asshole.
It's more that it's suffering. It's safe in certain cases to say, oh, he's probably suffering or that's suffering. But we don't,
well, then why don't you just stick to those fucking cases? Why are you making these extraordinary arguments where you're going to sit there and now play this stupid game? And Pyro's example sucked. I mean, starvation is not my definition of suffering. There's things a lot worse than starving to death.
Pleasure and suffering work in the same kind of subjective and same material way. I mean, they're relative kind of thing, how you experience pleasure.
Oh, please. That's just such nonsense. So, yeah, it's just all relative to how people experience things. So if you have cholera, it doesn't really cause any physical manifestations. You got, smallpox. Nah, it doesn't really cause a physical problem that's going to cause you any real pain. It's just you're projecting. You're just creating your own problem by somehow overreacting. So if I just tore you limb from limb like a Tyrannosaurus, I just picked you up and whipped you into pieces. It's just an illusion in your head that you're suffering. I mean, come on. Grow the fuck up.
Hunger is pleasure. In times when I was fasting or even times when I was trying to lose weight. I mean, I've experienced extreme, like where you're salivating and you get dizzy. I've experienced
again, so just a complete perversion of the argument. So the fact that you can derive pleasure from something we're describing as usually a negative circumstance, again, it's completely irrelevant. Then it's not suffering anymore. If you're deriving pleasure from it, of course, you're not suffering then. So we have to come up with some other element to impose on you where you can't contrive it and pervert it into some sort of joyous experience. And there are such circumstances. And you're just being such an asshole to sit there and play this game like you can somehow minimize every negative horror that's been perpetrated or felt by a conscious being on this earth by making some kind of idiotic statement that, well, it didn't really happen. They were really enjoying it because they were on a diet. Fuck you. I mean, an earthquake should happen and your house should fall the fuck on you and you should spend 3 or 4 days drinking your own fucking urine.
As a sense of pleasure and accomplishment. And that's of course it's because I knew I was not going to die, but I mean, that's the whole point, is that it's the same physical thing. I mean, I guess there's a physical element in knowing that food can be obtained if it needed. There's a physical element to that knowing, but it's all subjectively decided. It's all material. There's not like a more or less relation to this. And I don't see where you're drawing that.
There's not a more or less. I mean, come on. Oh, yeah, pleasure isn't more than pain, and hard pain isn't more negative than easy pain. I mean, it's just silly. There's just no way to disengage this value equation and pretend it doesn't matter. It's just fucking silly to do that.
So if you could tell me, or if you could clear that up, I would appreciate it. If you do make a response to this, please post it as a response, because I'm not watching YouTube videos.
Yeah, right. So basically, we all got to indulge you. What, you want us to wash your dishes and vacuum your living room? What else do we got to do for you? You can't be bothered to pay attention to the argument, and you want everybody to come to you. Jeez. And then you're going to make your argument in a snarky, impolite, and rude manner. Fine. Fuck you. Enough said. Whatever. Assholes are everywhere. All right, so just getting to Pyro, I guess. Might as well finish up. Maybe 2 parts, I guess, yeah. Probably so. Let's see if there's anything else here worth noting. I guess I could. I don't know. Some asshole did make a video fucking with Karina, which is really how the world twerks. I hate that guy. Now, I hate it for good reason, so I blocked him 3 or 4 more times. What a jackass. Goddamn, Karina #1, she posted that video a long time ago, about the PayPal thing. And it's just so fucking goddamn rude. Fucking, what an asshole. I mean, she makes one video, barely referencing it, and this asshole has to sit there and make a video about it. It's just really gross. Fucking goddamn. These are the assholes you let run rampant around here. Fuck that asshole. Anyway, that's irrelevant to this subject. So yeah, there's Pyro's video, but I really don't need to play the whole thing, go through the whole mess. I mean, he makes this, he's saying he understands, but like I said, I think he's still missing the point that underlies my point, which is that objectivity is the right word. I mean, you can keep playing this game, but objectivity is the right word. We are looking for a perspective where we are not imposing value through our subjective wants, desires, preferences, and prejudices. And so we're only making an intellectual equation. So if we, and there's nothing stopping our intelligence from being capable of that separation, of being capable of being intellectually honest. And that's all that's required. And if it was any other, like I said, if we had landed on a foreign planet and we didn't have any connected associations, we would be able to make these judgments. And we do make them all the time when it comes to our pets or some other animal species. We'll decide, well, go ahead and shoot a few from a helicopter or do this or do that. You know, we make equations all the time saying what's worth it and what's not worth it. And so it's just bullshit to say that we can't do that objectively, defining what the value to be preserved is. And like I said, when you try to do that part, that's when it really gets gnarly, because there aren't any values here worth anything. There's just negatives, and there's just our capacity to erase them. That's it. Once that game is over, the game is over. Yeah, that's good enough. Camera, there it is.